Success loves speed, or so the world would have you believe. From the moment we're young, the message is loud and relentless. Move faster, achieve earlier, peak younger. But what if that message isn't meant for everyone? What if your greatest fortune, your deepest fulfillment, was never meant to arrive at 25 or 30? What if the universe, in its quiet wisdom, has been patiently preparing you for something far greater? A season of success so rich, so rooted, it can only arrive when your spirit is fully ready to receive it. In a world obsessed with quick victories, many quietly carry the sorrow of feeling left behind. They wonder, did I miss my moment? Is it too late for me? Yet in the ancient traditions of feng shui and Eastern philosophy, we find a far gentler truth. True abundance does not rush. True abundance does not panic. Like the silent work of bamboo, which spends years deepening its roots before rising skyward overnight, some lives are destined to bloom late, and when they do, they bloom with brave, breathtaking strength. There is a sacred honoring of slow ripening. Earth energy in its wisdom teaches us that what lasts must first be patiently built. The great trees do not rise overnight. The richest rivers do not carve their path in a single season. Likewise, the prosperity that endures, the influence that blesses generations, often belongs to those who are willing to grow inward before they expand outward. If you have ever looked at your life and thought, why haven't I arrived yet? Know this, you are not behind. You are in the middle of becoming. Today, we will walk through 6 zodiac signs that ancient feng shui masters recognized as bearers of late-blooming fortune. 6 signs whose real wealth, real fulfillment, and real power unfold not at the frantic start, but in the graceful second act of life. And even if your sign is not on this list, you will find timeless lessons in how to harmonize your home, your energy, and your intentions with the natural rhythms of true success. Because life is not only about timing, it is about alignment. And alignment, once achieved, allows everything else to flow naturally toward you. No striving, no forcing, just an organic unfolding. Before we step into this exploration together, if this message already stirs something within you, if you feel even the faintest whisper of recognition, I invite you to like this video, share it with someone who might also need this reminder, and subscribe to New Day Mindfulness. We are growing gently and authentically, step by step, heart by heart. Your presence here matters deeply. Your voice helps strengthen this circle as we quietly walk toward 1,000 kindred spirits and beyond. Now let's begin. Let's rediscover why some blessings ripen later, and why, if you are still waiting, it may be because the very best parts of your story are still being written with care, with purpose, and with extraordinary love. The energy of late-blooming wealth. In feng shui, wealth is not seen as a linear sprint, but as a dynamic cycle, one that rises, deepens, pauses, and renews over time. Prosperity, like all things in nature, has its own seasons. Early harvests can seem thrilling at first, but they often burn through chi before a person's foundation is truly ready to sustain abundance. That is why true wealth, the kind that nourishes not only your bank account, but your health, your family, and your spirit, grows slowly, stabilized by wisdom, patience, and deep, deliberate rooting. Nature offers endless metaphors for this principle. Consider the earth after a long winter. Beneath the frozen surface, life is not dead. It is gathering strength, storing energy, preparing for a flourishing that, when it comes, will seem sudden, but is actually the result of seasons of invisible work. Or think of the bamboo, a plant revered across Asian cultures for its spiritual symbolism. For years after being planted, bamboo shows almost no above-ground growth. It quietly spends its time weaving an intricate underground network of roots. And then, once the foundations are complete, it bursts upward, sometimes growing several feet in a single day. A life that blooms late is often a life building an unshakable legacy. In personal energy terms, many people are born into what ancient masters call mature luck cycles. This means that while some individuals experience fast rises early on, often with just as fast declines, others are energetically designed to gather wisdom, clarity, and alignment before experiencing their major breakthroughs. Their 5 elements profile, whether dominated by wood, fire, earth, metal, or water, plays a deep role in this timing. Wood energy, for instance, represents early spring, the push toward growth. Those with strong wood may experience early opportunity, but must be careful not to exhaust themselves before their foundation matures. Fire represents summer, the visible, active, ambitious phase. But a fire that burns too fast can leave behind ashes, not prosperity. Earth energy teaches patience, balance, and long-term stability. Those with strong earth tend to come into their true power after their 30s or 40s, when their internal wisdom has fully anchored. Metal energy cuts, refines, and shapes. It often brings wealth later, through specialization, mastery, or accumulated experience. Water, the deep current, rewards those who are willing to flow steadily, learning to adapt, deepen, and trust the long arc of their path. Understanding these natural energy rhythms reveals something crucial. If your success has not arrived yet, it may not be because you are wrong or late. It may be because you are aligned with a cycle meant to create lasting, not fleeting, prosperity. A fortune that once it arrives will not just lift you for a moment, but sustain and bless every corner of your life. The 6 zodiac signs destined for later prosperity. Rat, the strategic builder. Those born under the rat sign carry a reputation for sharp instincts, strategic patience, and an almost uncanny ability to see opportunity where others see only obstacles. In feng shui philosophy, the rat embodies not just cleverness, but the deeper art of timing, knowing when to act and when to quietly wait. Unlike other zodiac energies that chase rapid success, rats often play a much longer game, understanding intuitively that true fortune ripens slowly. Their nature is deeply resourceful. They know how to plant seeds in seemingly barren soil and quietly nurture them out of sight until the conditions are right for exponential growth. This is why so many rats see their most profound wealth not in their 20s or even early 30s, but after the age of 40, when the groundwork they have laid in shadows finally bursts into visible success. It is not that rats are slow to succeed, it is that they are too wise to rush into fragile victories. They prioritize durability over display, substance over noise. In a world obsessed with fast fame, rats quietly build empires designed to endure storms. There is a timeless story of a man born in the year of the rat who worked for over 15 years behind the scenes, steadily building his small business with little outside attention. His friends marveled at his patience. Some even doubted him, thinking he had missed his moment. But what they could not see was the network of relationships he was weaving, the quiet innovations he was refining, and the inner wealth of skill he was cultivating. When his industry finally evolved and conditions shifted, he did not just launch a business, he exploded onto the scene with a brand that dominated his field almost overnight. By 45, he was leading an industry where others struggled to stay afloat. This is the hidden power of rat energy, the patience to let fortune mature before it is harvested. Those aligned with this sign would be wished not to measure their worth too early or lose heart when outer results seem slow. In feng shui, prosperity that blooms too soon without a strong, energetic root often fades just as quickly. Rats instinctively understand that when you plant deeply, you can weather droughts, storms, and changing seasons. And when the time comes, your success is not a stroke of luck, but the inevitable fruit of quiet mastery. Their wealth is not speculative. It is solid, sustainable, and deeply earned. 2. Ox, the silent investor. Oxen are the embodiment of endurance, silent strength, and disciplined patience. In both feng shui and broader Eastern philosophy, their energy is revered not for quick victories, but for the ability to carry great weight over long distances without complaint or show. Those born under the ox sign understand something that modern society often forgets, that true wealth is rarely loud, flashy, or immediate. It is cultivated slowly, methodically, one careful decision at a time. While others sprint toward early successes and often stumble, the ox moves steadily, laying foundations that will outlast passing trends and temporary rewards. Life often tests oxen early. Many experience financial hardship, professional setbacks, or emotional burdens that seem disproportionate to their efforts. Yet it is precisely this early pressure that forges their extraordinary resilience. In the cycles of feng shui, earth energy, stable, patient, quietly nourishing, aligns most deeply with the ox, suggesting that their greatest abundance blooms later, often after the age of 50. By then, their endurance has translated into wisdom and their patience into opportunity. There is a quiet, powerful story of a woman born in the year of the ox who spent most of her youth earning modest wages. While peers chased risky investments and trendy careers, she focused on saving small amounts consistently, month after month, year after year. She ignored the pressure to keep up with appearances or indulge in impulsive purchases. Instead, she treated every dollar as a seed, knowing that given enough time, a forest would grow. At 55, while many around her were downsizing their lifestyles in preparation for retirement, she was purchasing her second property, debt-free. Her success was not dramatic. It was dignified. She built a life that was not only financially secure, but emotionally peaceful, free from the anxieties that plague those who sprint too fast and fall too soon. This is the silent, enduring gift of ox energy. Prosperity for oxen does not come as a lottery win or a sudden windfall. It arrives as a natural consequence of decades of alignment between their values, their efforts, and their vision. Their wealth feels earned because it is, and because of this, it tends to nourish not only themselves but also generations that follow. Oxen remind us that slow is not the enemy of success, impatience is, and that when we commit to steady, principled effort, the universe itself eventually responds, not quickly, but with a depth and richness that no shortcut can replicate. 3. Free rabbit, the gentle magnet. Rabbits move you through life not by force, but by quiet resonance. In the deeper layers of feng shui wisdom, rabbit energy is associated with softness, sensitivity, and intuition. Qualities often overlooked in a world that praises boldness and speed. But it is precisely this emotional intelligence, this ability to sense timing and cultivate authentic relationships, that positions rabbits for extraordinary success later in life. In the early stages of their careers or ventures, rabbits often feel invisible. Their talents are subtle, their ambitions understated. While others push aggressively, rabbits build quietly, focusing on depth over breadth, trust over transaction. They may attract few opportunities at first because they are unwilling to compromise their values for quick wins. But beneath the surface, like a seed gathering strength underground, something far more enduring is growing. The true breakthrough for rabbits usually comes after the age of 40. By then, the connections they have nurtured, the reputation they have protected, and the emotional capital they have patiently invested all begin to return, not with noise, but with unstoppable momentum. Their wealth, when it arrives, feels almost effortless because it has been magnetized, not forced. There is a particularly moving example of a rabbit-born entrepreneur who spent her 30s struggling to build a small consulting business. She refused to engage in aggressive marketing or overselling. Instead, she focused on genuinely serving the few clients she had with extraordinary care. For years, growth was slow, but by her late 40s, something shifted. Former clients began referring friends, colleagues, and even strangers. Her business expanded organically to the point where she no longer needed to advertise at all. Opportunities flowed to her because she had created an invisible river of trust that needed only time to find its way back to her. This is the unseen power of the rabbit. Their success is a cumulative effect, the inevitable flowering of seeds sown in sincerity and tended with patience. In Feng Shui's 5 elements theory, rabbits align strongly with wood, signifying growth, flexibility, and resilience. Just as bamboo bends without breaking and rises with graceful persistence, so too do rabbits prosper, not through the roar of ambition, but through the quiet strength of authenticity. They teach us that the most fertile soil for wealth is not competition, but compassion, not manipulation, but genuine connection. And that when life finally blooms, it does so not in isolated bursts, but as a lush, continuous unfolding. 4. Monkey, the intelligent improviser. Monkey-born individuals embody one of the most fascinating energies in the Chinese zodiac, the restless alchemy of intellect, adaptability, and wit. In Feng Shui symbolism, the monkey aligns with metal energy, but unlike rigid metals, Their brilliance lies in fluidity. They are constantly absorbing, questioning, innovating, and reinventing themselves. Early in life, this dynamism can seem chaotic. Monkeys may appear unfocused, jumping from idea to idea, passion to passion. Others might misjudge them as unreliable or impulsive. Yet underneath the seeming disorder, monkeys are gathering an extraordinary toolkit, skills, experiences, and insights that no linear path could have provided. In their 20s and 30s, they often face repeated failures, false starts, and missed targets. But what seems like failure to the outside world is actually fermentation. Every experiment, every detour, every stumble is material they subconsciously archive, waiting for the right moment to weave it all into something extraordinary. And that moment typically arrives after the age of 45. By then, the monkey's vast internal archive crystallizes. They can connect dots no one else even sees. Setbacks that would have broken others become gold mines. Skills that once seemed irrelevant suddenly fuse into groundbreaking innovation. There's a striking story of a man born under the monkey sign who spent his early adult years pursuing art with little commercial success. He painted, sculpted, and even dabbled in graphic design, never settling, always moving, accumulating experiences that on the surface seemed disconnected and unsuccessful. By his late 40s, however, something shifted. Drawing on his years of chaotic creative exploration, he rebranded himself as a creative consultant. Within 2 years, he was leading best-selling workshops on innovation for major corporations, teaching executives how to fail smarter and think like artists. What once seemed like wasted years became his greatest asset. This is the true genius of monkey energy, the ability to improvise not just in small ways, but to completely reframe their life story. In the 5 elements system, metal represents refinement, transforming raw material into something precious. Monkeys, when mature, embody this perfectly. They take the unpolished mess of human experience and refine it into wisdom, creativity, and ultimately, success. They teach us that life's apparent failures are never the end. They are compost for future flourishing. They show that the real magic doesn't happen because you avoided mistakes. It happens because you learned how to dance with them. For monkeys, late success is not an accident. It is a masterpiece composed of every note, every fall, every reimagining they have ever dared to try. 5. Horse, the freedom rider. Those born in the year of the horse carry an untamable spirit, a relentless drive toward freedom, expression, and movement. In feng shui philosophy, they embody the fire element, dynamic, vivid, and fiercely alive. Horses crave expansion. They are natural explorers, both externally through travel and career shifts, and internally through dreams and personal evolution. But because their energy burns so brightly, they often gallop too fast in their early years. Many horses experience their 20s and 30s like a series of intense sprints, bursting into new opportunities, igniting passions, but they're often burning out before reaching sustainable success. They leap before fully studying the terrain. They build quickly, but sometimes abandon projects halfway in search of fresh fields. To outsiders, a horse's early path may seem scattered, even reckless. However, in reality, they are developing something far rarer than quick victories: emotional stamina. They are learning how to harness passion without letting it consume them. And this mastery almost always blooms after the age of 50. It's at this point that horses finally integrate their deep need for freedom with the wisdom of pacing. They no longer chase every opportunity. They select, they refine, they know when to gallop and when to stand firm and allow fortune to come to them. There's a powerful story of a man born under the horse sign who spent his early adulthood changing careers restlessly. He started as a corporate trainer, then became a travel photographer, then a life coach. Each time he built momentum, something inside urged him to move on. Friends said he lacked focus, family worried about his future. But quietly, he was gathering a profound education, not just in business, but in understanding people, cultures, healing, and resilience. At 52, he founded a wellness retreat center in the mountains, drawing from all his past roles. And within a few years, it became one of the most sought-after sanctuaries for exhausted executives and artists alike. This is the secret of horse destiny. Their wealth comes not from racing ahead of others, but from weaving all their journeys into a home where others can finally rest. In the five elements, fire transforms itself naturally, lighting the way forward not just for the self, but for entire communities. Horses, once matured, do exactly that. They teach us that freedom isn't about constant motion, it's about choosing when to move, when to pause, and when to build something that outlasts even the wildest ride. For horses, true success doesn't come from winning the early races. It comes from mastering the long, beautiful, unpredictable marathon of life. 6. Dog, the trusted guardian. Those born under the sign of the dog carry one of the most honorable energies in the Chinese zodiac. In feng shui symbolism, dogs are grounded in earth element virtues: loyalty, righteousness, protection, and quiet endurance. From a young age, dog individuals often feel an innate sense of duty, a deep pull toward justice, fairness, and service to something greater than themselves. However, this strong moral compass can make their early path much harder. While others compromise for quick gains, dogs often refuse. They lose early opportunities because they won't betray a friend, a value, or a promise. They walk away from lucrative deals that don't align with their conscience. They stand alone when standing together would have been easier. It's no exaggeration to say that many dogs spend their 20s and 30s feeling like outsiders, watching others race ahead while they wrestle with quieter battles of integrity. But this slow, principled journey is exactly what sets dogs apart later in life. When they reach their 40s and 50s, something shifts profoundly. People begin to notice the unshakable foundation dogs have quietly built. Their reputation, forged in years of sacrifice and consistent character, becomes their greatest wealth. Trust, once seen as a burden, transforms into an empire. There's a powerful real-life story of a woman born in the year of the dog. In her early career in international development, she was offered projects tied to questionable funding sources. Many of her peers accepted without hesitation, gaining faster promotions. But she declined. She took smaller, slower steps, always choosing work that aligned with ethical principles. For decades, her path seemed slower, almost invisible. But by her mid-50s, her patience and steadfastness paid off. She was invited to lead a globally respected NGO, one that valued transparency and genuine impact. Her ability to inspire trust became the key that opened doors to partnerships, funding, and influence that many could only dream of. This is the dog's destiny. They don't chase wealth or fame. They build an invisible reservoir of loyalty and respect that becomes undeniable with time. In feng shui, earth nourishes metal, symbolizing that when you stand firm in your values, abundance and recognition eventually follow, solid and lasting like a mountain's roots. Dogs teach us a profound truth about prosperity: that fortune built on loyalty, honor, and service does not crash with market swings or public opinion. It grows slowly, deeply, and quietly until one day it stands like a beacon others naturally seek. For dogs, the real triumph is not how much they win, it's how well they have lived. When their time arrives, their wealth is not just financial. It is karmic, emotional, and deeply enduring, touching not just their own lives, but generations to come. Practical feng shui tips to support late-life prosperity. Spatial alignment. Tip 1 in feng shui. When we speak of delayed prosperity or late-blooming fortune, it's not simply a matter of waiting for the right time. It's about cultivating the right space to receive it. One of the most vital areas to support if you want to strengthen your success later in life is the northeast sector of your home. This area is traditionally linked with wisdom, career growth, and personal development, all crucial energies that ripen with age and experience. To activate the northeast properly, begin by introducing elements that reinforce earth energy, since earth is the governing element of this sector. Choose warm, grounding tones. Think soft yellows, light browns, terracotta, and sandy neutrals. These colors create an environment that feels stable, nurturing, and patient, echoing the very qualities needed for late-life prosperity. Another powerful enhancer is lighting. Avoid dark, stagnant corners in the northeast. Dim or cold lighting suggests intellectual fatigue and career stagnation. Instead, place a warm, steady lamp or soft wall sconce there to mimic the reliable glow of sunrise, a metaphor for renewed opportunities, ours, no matter your age. Think of this light as feeding the soil of your future. If possible, select lighting fixtures made from ceramic, clay, or stone to further anchor the earth element. Healthy plants are also vital. Choose strong, vibrant greenery like jade plants, golden pothos, or even small citrus trees if space allows. These living beings represent continuous growth, adaptability, and enduring fortune. But be mindful, the plants must be healthy. Wilted, struggling plants in your wisdom sector create energetic messages of stuckness and depletion. Care for your plants as you would care for your dreams, with attention, patience, and steady encouragement. Small symbolic objects can further personalize and empower this sector. For example, a simple crystal geode, an image of a mountain range, or a meaningful quote framed in natural wood can subtly reinforce themes of resilience, strength, and steady progress. It's important not to overload this space with clutter. Remember, in Feng Shui, clarity invites clarity. A few powerful items placed with intention will do far more to nourish your late-blooming success than a crowded shelf of random decorations. One overlooked but transformative practice is to sit quietly in your northeast sector for a few minutes each day. Perhaps in the morning or evening, hold a cup of tea, reflect on your long journey, and set a silent intention for the next chapter of your life. This small act, showing up with presence in the space you've aligned, signals to the universe that you are ready to receive with grace. There's a beautiful story I often share. A man in his early 50s, after years of feeling unseen in his career, decided to transform his northeast corner. He placed a warm lamp on a simple clay table, added a strong peace lily, and kept the area free from electronics and distractions. Within 6 months, unexpected leadership opportunities emerged, and he found himself offered a role he once thought had passed him by. His success didn't come from desperate striving. It came because he had cultivated a space ready to hold it. In Feng Shui, space is not passive. It listens, it mirrors, it amplifies. When you prepare your home thoughtfully, especially your northeast sector, you prepare yourself not just to chase fortune, but to become a natural magnet for it at exactly the right season of your life. Spatial alignment, tip 2. In Feng Shui, water is more than just a physical element. It is the carrier of wealth, opportunity, and emotional flow. When water leaks or drains improperly within a home, it symbolically mirrors the leaking of fortune and resources. This is why one of the most critical actions you can take, especially if you aspire to stronger prosperity later in life, is to address any plumbing issues without delay. Leaky faucets, dripping pipes, clogged drains, or slow-flowing sinks may seem like minor inconveniences on the surface, but energetically they create a steady, invisible siphoning of abundance. Imagine trying to fill a beautiful vessel, only to discover it has tiny cracks you cannot see. No matter how much you pour in, it slowly escapes. This is exactly the kind of silent energy loss that occurs when broken plumbing goes unrepaired. The areas most sensitive to this are the kitchen and the bathroom, two spaces that manage the essential cycles of intake and release. In the kitchen, where food is prepared and nourishment flows, water issues can disrupt your ability to build or sustain wealth. A leaking kitchen tap doesn't just waste resources, it weakens the energy field where financial abundance is nurtured. In the bathroom, the symbolism is equally powerful. Bathrooms are already areas associated with letting go of waste and toxins. If plumbing issues persist there, it suggests that not only are you struggling to release what no longer serves you, but also that beneficial energies are slipping away without proper containment. Fixing broken plumbing isn't just a practical maintenance task. It becomes an act of energetic sealing, a declaration that you are ready to hold on to blessings, to value what comes into your life, and to stop the slow, unconscious patterns of self-drainage. The simple act of tightening a faucet, resealing a drain, or replacing a worn pipe transforms your home from a place of slow erosion to a fortress of retention and prosperity. There is a story I often reflect on about a retired couple who, after years of financial anxiety despite having decent pensions, finally decided to renovate their neglected kitchen. They fixed long-ignored leaks under the sink, replaced a broken dishwasher hose, and repaired a constantly dripping bathroom tap. Within months, not years, unexpected financial opportunities appeared. Old debts were repaid to them, new consulting offers came in, and their sense of security deepened dramatically. They hadn't taken on new jobs, they hadn't won the lottery, they had simply repaired the energetic holes in their environment that had been quietly draining their peace. In feng shui, and indeed in life, the forces that shape your destiny are rarely loud. They are silent, cumulative, often invisible to the hurried eye. A single broken pipe might not ruin your fortune today, but left unattended, it teaches your subconscious a dangerous lesson, that it is acceptable to lose slowly, that decay is normal, and that prosperity is a momentary guest, not a lasting presence. When you repair your plumbing, you are not just fixing a leak, you are repairing your relationship to flow itself. You are affirming with your actions that you are ready to receive and retain blessings with both hands open and strong. And in a world that often emphasizes effort over energy, that single act of conscious stewardship can open doorways you thought had long been sealed. Spiritual reminder. In both feng shui and the deeper layers of ancient wisdom, we are reminded of a profound yet often overlooked truth. The outer space you tend is a mirror for the inner life you cultivate. When you prepare your home thoughtfully, when you care for your environment patiently, you are not just cleaning or decorating, you are setting the stage for your future blessings to land and stay. Rushing through this process, cutting corners, or treating your space as an afterthought creates a silent energy of impatience, distrust, and instability. But when you nurture your environment slowly, with full presence, you are sending a powerful message to the universe. I am ready to receive lasting fortune, not fleeting luck. Wealth, true, enduring wealth, does not flood into chaotic spaces. It seeks rootedness. It flows where intention has been steadily poured, where patience has been practiced, not as suffering, but as preparation. Think of a farmer who plants seeds. He does not scream at the earth to hurry. He waters daily, tends the soil, removes weeds, and trusts the unseen work happening below. In the same way, every act you take, repairing a leaking faucet, placing a fresh plant, lighting a warm corner, is like tending the soil of your destiny. There's a quiet beauty in spaces where time was allowed to work its magic. You can feel it immediately when you walk into such a home, a sense that the walls have witnessed care, that the air carries peace, that prosperity is not being chased but welcomed. And the same applies to your personal journey. If your wealth, your recognition, or your dreams have not yet arrived, it may not be because they were denied to you. It may simply be because the soil is still deepening its richness, your roots are still strengthening, and the harvest, when it comes, will not be shallow or short-lived. Patience is not passive. In feng shui, patience is active stewardship. It is cleaning, rearranging, mending, blessing. It is preparing the invisible vessels through which your future will pour. And when you build your environment with patience, you align yourself with the deeper rhythms of life, where growth is inevitable, even if unseen for a time. So when you place that bowl of fresh limes at your door, when you repair that small leak, when you arrange your keys with care or nurture a pothos in the living room, do not ask how soon fortune will knock. Trust that it is already on its way, drawn not to your desperation, but to your deliberate welcome. In the end, wealth, whether material, emotional, or spiritual, is not a race to win. It is a relationship to nourish. And the spaces you create today become the foundations upon which your grandest seasons will stand tomorrow. Final, there's a quieted truth that nature has always known, but that the modern world often forgets. The richest blooms never appear overnight. A tree does not rush to bear fruit. A mountain does not rise in a year. And a soul, if it is destined for something deep and lasting, must be given the grace to root, to mature, to gather unseen strength. If your life sometimes feels slower than you hoped, if your dreams seem to be taking the long way to reach you, it is not a failure. It is a deeper preparation. Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. And so it is with your destiny. The long seasons of patience, of silent effort, of unnoticed growth are not lost time. They are the very foundation of the prosperity you will one day hold with steady hands and a wise heart. In Feng Shui, we honor this rhythm. We understand that quick flashes of luck are not the same as true fortune. True fortune grows slowly, nourished by patience, rooted in resilience, and harvested in seasons of readiness. So today I invite you to breathe deeper, to honor where you are right now. Whether you are still sowing seeds, tending invisible roots, or just beginning to see the first green shoots of your effort, know that you are exactly on time for your own life. Your best season is not behind you. It is not lost. It is still ahead, quietly unfolding, just as it was always meant to. If this message touched something inside you, if it offered a new way to see your journey with softer eyes, I warmly invite you to share your feelings in the comments. I would truly love to hear what phase you feel you're moving through, whether it's sowing, rooting, growing, or finally blooming. And if you would like to walk further on this gentle, powerful path together, I invite you to subscribe to New Day Mindfulness. Every like, every share, every voice helps this sanctuary of patience, wisdom, and grounded prosperity grow stronger. With your presence, we are quietly, beautifully moving toward our first 1,000 hearts and beyond. Because in the end, the most powerful changes are never rushed. They are lived, breathed, and invited in with care.